Bismillah walhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillahi. I personally didn't want to get into this theme because I feel as though that from one part it's a waste of time. But from another part is an essential issue to discuss as a community. I was listening to a conference recently, and part of that conference was positioned to give advice to converts with regard to the issue of the holidays. And they invited two converts to talk about the issue. One seemed to have studied and one seems to have been in Islam for a very long time and understands the dynamics of difficulty that come with navigating family relationships and so on and so forth. I think that there are a number of different issues that are at play when we start talking about how we function in the world. I think that we have to be very careful that we address these issues solely from the way that we feel about situations or the experience that Muslims have in other places. Like, one of the things that came up was the idea that if Muslims were to engage in the Christmas holidays, because the Christmas holiday in specific is related to the people of the book, then what's to stop them from being in India and functioning with Ganesh and so on and so forth? And although logically, I can appreciate the concept. I can appreciate the concept to raise another example and draw an analogy and then try to cancel out the practice of Muslims engaging these holidays from that angle. But I don't think that that necessarily works, because this is not an issue of argumentation from just a rational position. Firstly, many of the Muslims are extremely confused on the issue of Christmas itself, from the angle of framing out the discussion properly. For instance, what are we talking about exactly? Are we talking about the permissibility of someone going to church on Christmas Day? Are we talking about the permissibility of saying Merry Christmas to someone? Are we talking about the permissibility of putting up decorations and having a tree, so to speak? Are we talking about Muslims sitting with their relatives that are non-Muslim during the holiday, which is not only on so-called Christmas Day officially, but it becomes the day before and the day after, so on? There's a number of different issues that we confront here. And then who are we talking about? So we have to frame out the issue of actions and the different types of actions. Then we have to talk about who are we talking about. We shouldn't mix the situations that we find among the first generation Muslims in the immigrant community with the situation of the new Muslims or the convert community, because the convert community is not one community in terms of how long it has been around. We shouldn't confuse those issues. We shouldn't bring to play, for instance, what goes on in India with regard to what goes on here. Because right now we have a situation in India of hostility between the Muslims and the Hindus. And it's a different situation in its totality. You understand what I'm saying? We have something in Islam that's called al-ashbah wal-nadhair wal-furuq. And the ulama, they teach us to keep in mind the difference between both of these. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ya Aba Ammar. So the situation becomes that some scenarios that we confront are similar to each other. And some scenarios that we confront may seem similar to each other, but there's differences between them. You know, that's extremely important. Here, in this book here, Kitab al-Furuq, Liqadi Abdul Wahab al-Baghdadi. This is just one book, a small book on these types of issues. On every chapter, fiqh, the difference between wudu and zakah as an act of ibadah, and the issue of intention. Is the issue of intention and wudu and zakah the same? Both of them are acts of ibadah according to the majority of the ulama. The Hanafis don't consider wudu to be an act of ibadah. But the majority of the ulama, the Malikis, the Shafis, the Hanbalis, they consider it to be an act of ibadah. And ibadah is essential to, intention is essential to ibadah. But why is it that we differentiate between the intention in zakat and the intention in wudu? What are the details if it's just all of those acts are acts of ibadah? The reason for giving that example that's semi-academic and maybe seems unrelated to people is that, look, we can't bring in all of these situations, all of these different scenarios, and mix them all together. The situation of the Muslims that are struggling with their iman and they were born Muslim. The situation of the Muslims that migrated here and they have to go to the workplace party, and it's a time period that is a workplace party celebration of Christmas. That the situation of the Muslim, you know, that may be going to church with some relatives. That's not the situation of the Muslims that's sitting down and eating a meal in a house. Not even necessarily maybe on the Christmas day itself. It could be the night before. It could be Christmas day. It could be the day after, whatever. Muslims are confusing issues in this regard. And so the reality of how we're handling this, I don't want to talk about the situation that pertains to the general Muslim community. I want to talk about the situation of the new Muslims. When someone tries to tell me how to navigate these types of situations, and they try to tell me what's Islamically right and what's not Islamically right, after having been in the deen studying it for almost about 20 years now, and being a convert myself, when they try to come at me and tell me it's a compromise in the deen if X, Y, and Z are done. Well, first of all, now you began to talk about a situation that you yourself don't even understand. That's the first issue. Then the other issue that comes up is, how are you constructing your position? With what knowledge of the deen are you constructing your position? If we say that it's necessary to deal with the converts based on the Quranic methodology of graduality, you understand what I'm saying? The tarbiyah of the Quran itself, then don't come and say that the deen is complete. It's not about the issue of the deen being complete. Nobody is arguing that the whole of the revelation came. You're confusing issues on that, people. We're talking about how do we build an ummah. So if we're going to say that the Quranic methodology in addressing the conditions of the Sahaba is not complete, then we have a problem there. The way that the Quran addressed the fitrah, the nature of the people of Jahiliyyah, was one in which it took steps and stages. Nobody's changing the knowledge of the deen. When we begin to say we have an understanding that X, Y, and Z is haram. As a matter of fact, the fatwa of the situation changes with time and place. Let's not confuse the issue of fatwa and the issue of qada. The situation of a Muslim that took their shahada and that is having a very rocky relationship with their families. Those Muslims like that is not the situation of a Muslim who's been Muslim 15 years, 20 years, and they're trying to mend their relationship with their families. That's why we shouldn't talk about these issues in this way. That's why it's important for us to be able to have an understanding of how to navigate in these rocky situations without accusing people of kufr and bid'ah and this and that. or compromising in the deen. If anything, what I see coming out of the convert community is a radical movement to change. More so than what we see out of people that were born in Islam, that still operate out of custom and don't look at the dalil of the Sharia and the principle of the Sharia and what the Sharia is commanding to. We don't want to bring up those types of debates and arguments, but we have to keep the convert reality very clear before us. Because what we're seeing as imams and mashaykh from the convert community is that we're seeing many of the converts leaving the deen because everybody's interfering in their development and their understanding and in their relationships and in their lives, was not willing to suffer the reality and the consequences with them. And so when we have people coming and saying, well, you should tell the reality as it is from the beginning. I have a situation right now where the sister was Muslim and she got married to a Muslim and she didn't even tell her family that she was Muslim. She didn't even tell her parents that she was Muslim. And when they found out by a moment that was not calculated that she was Muslim, because they happened to see the Quran. And this sister is already having her own struggles, not only with the issue of practicing the deen, but with the challenges of the dunya. So when you come and you say, well, you can't be with your family, this is bid'ah, this. Let's separate issues. Is she going to the church? Is she sitting in the church engaging in an act of ibadah? That's why I said we have to understand furuq. And that situation is quite different than a Muslim that was born Muslim with a family that's Muslim, with about 100 different family members that are here that came from overseas, and they have a support group. The ramifications of that action of not appearing in their family gatherings in that situation is very harsh. Just like some of our brothers that were born Muslim, if they don't go to a dawah, it could be a big fitna for them in the family. That if they're invited to a dinner at 7 o'clock and they don't show up with the family and their kids, it could be a serious issue. So we have to teach the Muslims how to navigate, the no-Muslims how to navigate. Teaching them how to navigate is not just saying that this is haram and that's haram and hold on to your deen. That's not teaching them how to navigate. If you want the new Muslims to navigate properly, come up with the zakat money to build institutions which have the ability to support these new Muslims in their growth. And move yourself out of the way and allow convert leadership to be in that position which will guide them and help them to become strong Muslims. If that is the real case, that we want to see the convert community establish itself in the deen. But no, what we do is we block and we have our own institutions that are not geared toward that reality. So we shouldn't mix up issues. We shouldn't mix up the issue of what's going on with the converts with the issue of what's going on in the political front. Why are we, that's not Islamic scholarship. We're not going to find that in the books of Maulana Thanawi. We're not going to find that in the books of Shah Anwar Kashmiri or Shah Waliullah, in the books of logic, Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani. We're not going to find that in Bajuri and Ibn Taymiyyah, and no scholar operates on that level. That if you allow this, then this happens. That's not how our ulama function. We have clear methodology on how we deal with issues. So the slippery slope logic doesn't work when we're talking about the knowledge of halal and haram. The knowledge of halal and haram, we need to determine the action itself and the situations which revolve around that action, and then we study them, and then we see what it is that the hukum shari is and how it relates to that. To go to a fatwa book that was written 500 years ago or 150 years ago to speak to a situation that's taking place in 2020 in this environment, whether it's in the Chicagoland area or the New York area, that's not scholarship. We can hear already from the way that these situations are dealt with that it's not the methodology of the Mufti. That's not the methodology in Rasim al-Mufti. That's not the methodology in how Imam al-Nawawi teaches us how to give a fatwa. It's not the methodology of Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayh and his Sanat al-Fatwa. It's not the methodology of Ibn al-Qayyim or any of the people that have written books on how you give fatwa. Because you have to consider the situation that's there at hand. And we have to deal with the non-Muslims on the principle, ittaqullah mastata'tum. We can't eliminate the Quranic principle in that regard, because the Quran, unlike the Torah and the Injil, the Quran didn't come all at one time and enforce the people to practice all at one time. That's not the methodology of the prophethood of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala revealed the Quran bi tadrij, stage by stage. And so the reality of the situation is that the human being is operating stage by stage. If you want to use a logical argument rooted in science as well, there's no way, for the most part, that people will begin to speak automatically. It's a process that comes stage by stage. There's no way that we find that even the Sharia, when a person is born, it automatically obligates them to practice. It comes stage by stage. The people are taught how to make salah at a certain point, and then it's enjoined upon them at another point. Many of the converts are going through personal transformative situations. It's not our business to dictate to them. The Sahaba themselves were drinking alcohol for many years before they came to a point of it being eliminated. What are we talking about? Are we talking about the Quranic methodology? We understand that the whole of the Quran has been revealed. But the issue is not a debate about the whole of the Quran being revealed or the deen being complete. Right? This is not the issue of akmaltu lakum dinakum. This is the issue of understanding what that means. And takmil ad-deen, or the completion of the deen, means that there's principles in the deen itself that we draw on. The details of the deen were not revealed to us. It was the principles of the deen with the ability to understand how it is to apply those principles in every age and every time. And so we don't need a lesson in self-transformation. We have people like Malcolm X that transformed themselves. We have many converts that have transformed them. We don't need anybody, to be honest with you, that was born Muslim to try to tell us how to change. We ourselves have been in that process. We ourselves have sacrificed from our families. We ourselves have sacrificed from our own desires and issues to be Muslim and maintain in Islam in ways that other people can't understand. So when you confuse the knowledge base with the reality of people's experience of how it is that they themselves are transforming, how they themselves are building up to make the salah, how they themselves are building to come into the deen. We understand the ayah of the Quran, "Udkhulu fi silmi kafa," but explain to me what was the background. The background was that the people of the book came into Islam and they wanted to rule by the book that they had in the Islam. That's not what the converts are doing. The converts are struggling to try to understand how to come into a silmi kafa. And that's not going to come by somebody just telling them, well, your family, they're kuffar. This is the kafir holiday. That type of approach doesn't work. That type of approach doesn't work for a good many people. But if you are there really walking with them, you understand what I'm saying? And they understand their commitment, they have to learn how to break from certain things in their families and their cultures. In a progress. It's not, they themselves have to learn. That can't come from you. That's a sacrifice. Do you understand what that means for some people? Some of our sisters, they have been thrown into the street for taking shahada, something which many of the Muslims won't understand. We have sisters that have been thrown to the street for taking shahada. We have sisters that have lost their marriages to Muslim men because they decided that they wanted to wear hijab, but the Muslim man married her when she was not wearing hijab, and when she takes that commitment to the deen, boom, she loses her relationship. It means she loses her marriage. It means she loses her stability. We have cases of Muslim sisters that have come into the deen and they have to try to figure out if they can stay married or not and what the consequence of that is. So there's a lot of situations that we have, and we understand usul. We understand the principles of fiqh. We understand the maqasid of the sharia. We understand how it is that the ulama give fatwa. When the born Muslims come in and they step into the convert realm, the realm of the convert community, a reality that they don't understand by experience. They may see it, they may have heard of it, they may be married to somebody. But we have to respect here the struggle that people have, the journey that they have. And what we need is to learn how to apply knowledge. Just for some people, if they're told, cut that, they will cut it. But I've also seen brothers that say that with that type of understanding, while they're living, I know a brother while he was living in his mother's house, called his mama kafir. Is that the adab that the Sharia teaches us? He literally told me she's a kafir. I'm like, bro, you're living in her house. She's the one that is. It's not to say that she doesn't have. It's not to say that call her from the people of belief. It's the issue of where is your adab with the one that gave you birth? Where's your rahmah with the one that gave you birth? If the Prophet ﷺ washed the body of Abu Talib so that Allah can lessen the punishment, then what about us in dealing with our living relatives who we want them to come into the deen? Why do we have to take that position of animosity and hatred to our own relatives when the deen itself commands us to silat al-rahm? That even if our parents are not Muslim, that we have to have a sense of regard and respect and obedience for them as long as it's not in a matter of shirk. How do you expect that relationship to exist if you're calling us to cut our relations with them? Knowing that after Tawheed, one of the most important things is to maintain silat al-rahm. And that's, we believe, is across all of the madahib. It's across all of the school of thoughts. If you want to take Kitab al-Tawheed by Shaykh Muhammad bin Abdul Wahab, look in that. If you want to go to Maulana Kandahlawi's books and see what the fadail is for family relationships, go to that. If you want to go straight to the Quran, go to that. If you want to go to the ahadith, go to that. If you want to see what the hukuk or the rights of our relatives is, all right, go to that. We don't need that type of approach. We already have 20-something years, 30 years of experience with that methodology. And what that has led most of us to is the issue of not dealing with our relatives, the issue of takfir. You understand what I'm saying? That's what comes on our mouths. Not da'wah, but takfir. The kafir. Not knowing how to deal with our parents, not knowing how to deal with our cousins, not knowing how to deal with our neighbors. If the concern really was what is bad the deen fi qulubina, if that was the real concern, to establish the deen in our hearts so that we maintain firm, then we have to learn proper. This deen is mateen. This deen is mateen. You understand what I'm saying? It's firm. And even though some tried to claim the hadith doesn't have a basis, even Shaykh al-Albani hasanahu. So we find across the madahib, whatever your muhaddib style is, that the hadith works, that this deen is firm. If you play it, if you should go into it, you should dive into it with rifq. You should dive into it with rifq, with ease. We can't eliminate the minhaj of the Quran because we think that that's the tarbiyah that we want to give. We can't eliminate the way that the Quran came to the Sahaba step by step and say, well, now this is not, you're not a convert. You understand what I'm saying? You're not a convert. And so you don't understand what those changes mean in yourself. How am I, if I'm struggling with issues, how am I going to change it right away, right now at the moment? I should learn the principle. I should learn that the deen is calling me to X, Y, Z. And then I should work on the process of going through it. But there's no way that there's certain things that the converts that they're going through that they're just going to eliminate them overnight like this, on instant. We know that the Sahaba, we understand that concept. We have that in our communities. We don't need anybody to teach us. Brother Ahmed and Abdul Mu'min, you know what I'm saying? And Khadija, we watch that all the time, mashallah. We watch our people all the time do that. It's not an issue of words. We watch our people give up their families. They give up their habits. We watch that all the time. But to tell the general convert body that reality, or to come back and say, well, I wish someone would have told me that before. But that's your experience. What you wish is your experience, ya Shaykh. That's not necessarily an experience that we can universalize to everybody. Everybody's not in the same position, ya Shaykh. And so it's not appropriate that we take and we generalize these situations. We need to work with the convert community in all of its diversity. And that means manpower. It doesn't mean lectures from just the television. It means people that actually work with them. It means people that actually struggle with them. I have converts that are on the street homeless. They ask for help. I have a convert that's a transsexual that is worried about the punishment of Allah for doing something wrong. I have converts that are struggling with maintaining their association to Islam after leaving Islam because of what it is that they encounter with the Muslims. I have converts struggling with their identities. I have converts that are alone. They're alone in the whole village, in the other village, in the other village. They're alone by themselves with no support. And every day they go out wearing hijab and confronting a whole society which is against them. We have scenarios and situations which vary from place to place. But you have to realize that the non-Muslims, when they see that reality, what they see is these Muslims that came from nowhere, they look strange, and they're telling my daughter and my son, don't be with me. That's how they interpret that. We talk about dawah, we have to realize how it is that our families are dealing with. People, if we want to talk about experience, when I came into Islam, my mom cut her ties with me for 15, 20 years almost. You understand what I'm saying? I pulled back from talking to my father because of things that he has said about Islam. And alhamdulillah, I have a relationship with my father. But for people to come in and try to tell me what sacrificing the deen is, you understand what I'm saying? When you don't go through that, I made hijrah for the sake of Allah Ta'ala and cut all of my family ties at one time. I cut it completely for the sake of the deen. That's not how we're going to operate with the convert community. Those of you who just started studying Islam and this and that, we're not going to make the same mistakes that we've been making 30 and 40 years. We didn't go through all this trial and tribulation, trial and error and suffering and studying the deen and sacrificing and this and that so that we can see a new generation of converts repeat the same mistakes and end up in poverty and weakness and humility, because at the end of the day, and being humiliated because the Muslim community is not there to really support. That's just the reality at the end of the day. And so we have to teach the converts how to navigate gradually so that the deen can be firm in them. If that means that they go step by step, and it means that they deal with drinking alcohol step by step, as long as they have that understanding that they have to please Allah and that alcohol is haram and they're on their way, let them struggle with that. What we should be asking is, where is our support for them? What we should be asking is, what are we doing to assist that person that's in that situation? That's in any situation of sin. You understand what I'm saying? It's almost nearly impossible that a person is just going to transform themselves overnight. Alhamdulillah that we have people that do it. Alhamdulillah that we have people that have the capacity of dropping everything and they go cold turkey and they transform. But guess what? If the right supports are not there, they crash at the same time. And they sometimes even go worse than what they were in. We've seen people, because of this type of mentality, come in. They all of a sudden, they wear gloves. They wear niqab. They wear all black. They cut themselves off from their friends. They cut themselves off from this and that. And then they end up taking everything off, drinking, nearly insane. You understand what I'm saying? And we're trying to pull them back, trying to make sure that they have the basics of Iman. And that's not the first scenario. I'm not making this stuff up. This is not like let me make stuff up for entertainment or for followers or for viewings. I don't know when we're going to move away from this mentality and this mindset of trying to enjoin on the converts what they should be doing. And in the same breath, we're trying to deal with the situation of first generation born Muslims. That's not going to work. The situation of the first generation born Muslims, some of it looks like the convert situation and some of it is not. And they deserve their own conversation and they deserve their own attention to deal with that situation as it is. Just like the situation of sisters is not the situation of brothers. And they deserve that type of conversation as it is. Sisters that are converts are not like sisters that are born Muslim and they're struggling. Sisters that are first generation and struggling are not sisters that come from overseas and are struggling. If we want to get anywhere in the da'wah, we have to study the situation as it is. Every community, we need to study their situation and always have dynamic information to understand what's going on. There's some things that we have to be careful. If you send a fatwa into some communities, you'll destroy that person's life, that person's dignity. And we want to talk about converts. We have situations in the Chicagoland area where we have suicides, and we're not addressing that issue. Are we going to say that is because they don't have proper aqidah and they come from Muslim families and Muslim communities? Or we're going to stop and say, what's going on? That's better what we should do. We shouldn't judge. We shouldn't blame the families. We should sit down and try to understand what is happening to the ummah and how can we address it properly. But it's not an appropriate forum that we think that we're going to solve the situation of converts by telling them, just hold on and stand firm, and don't compromise your deen. They understand that process. When they took that shahada, they understood they were going into a world. They already understood that, I'm taking the shahada. A lot of them, they sit back and they think for a while. Giving up pork, giving up this, giving up that. They understand the basic concept of sacrifice. That's not what the converts need. The converts need to understand how to reconstruct their relationships. The Quran, when it came down initially and all of those relationships were severed, it reconstructed them. That's why we have Nidam al-Mu'akha. That's why we have the reconstruction of the inheritance, the brotherhood pact between the Muhajirin and the Ansar. Allah Ta'ala didn't just order something and that was it. The Prophet ﷺ was in the background guiding the people. Well, Ansar, we need this much for you so that we can deal with the Muhajirun because they have this type of orientation. And we need to address their situation. When the Sahaba left Mecca, because they couldn't I'm talking about the group that made hijrah to Africa, the group that made hijrah to Habasha, they had to discuss that with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We can't handle it here. So we can't say the issue of al-istata' is not from the deen. If we get sick and we don't have the ability, the deen comes in and says, if you're sick, if you're on the bed, then the form of the salah changes. That's just the reality. The deen addresses all issues and all situations in the living, not from a book that's stagnant, because the Quran is not stagnant. And it's a problem that we have, that we're allowing this type of stuff. I'm not judging intentions. I'm not here to judge intentions. I'm not Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. This is not a court of judgment over people's intentions. This is a very open discussion on the issue of educational methodology and what we want to see. I'm an imam and a sheikh in the convert community. I'll pull out titles for that. Myself and my own value, it doesn't matter. But for the convert community, I'll pull out titles. I'll pull out my titles and my credentials for the convert community, not for myself. And for the convert community, I have the credentials, I have the degrees, I have the titles, I have the position. We're not accepting that type of approach. Because I'm the one that's sitting up at 11 o'clock at night trying to counsel someone to come back into Islam. Because I'm the one that's sitting and crying and taking from my family and going through the stress of the situation of trying to navigate in somebody's situation with their families. We're the ones that are watching people go to the street. I just watched a convert sister, go from wearing hijab to going and I'm trying not to expose her, engaging in certain things in public that are not allowable in the deen. What am I supposed to do with that case? Tell her she's trash? Tell her that she's going to kufr, that she's a munafiq? Or am I supposed to be there and walk with her in her struggle? So that she sees that the mercy of Allah Ta'ala is there, and she's gently reminded that there's a better life in Islam. What approach are we supposed to take? Because we're being told, X out your families. We're being told, X out those who are supposedly compromising in the deen. What approach are we supposed to take at this point? There's things that we hear. You know what I'm saying? You invalidate the converts' experiences when they come into Islam. You invalidate the convert leadership. Then you bring fatwa that don't have any benefit for us in our development. That's just, at the end of the day, it's not appropriate. No, we go gradually. And if a person is struggling, then they struggle. The Sahaba struggle. Are we better than the Sahaba? The Sahaba went years and the Sahaba went to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in Ramadan with committing major sin, violating the hurmat of Ramadan. Isn't that how some rulings came about? That the Sahaba went to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said that they have destroyed themselves because they had sex in the middle of the day in Ramadan. And the ruling came and the Prophet guided them to the situation. So what we find in the methodology of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if we want to learn how to teach the deen, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a teacher, this is written by the Muhaddith Abdul Fattah Abu Ghudda, supported by the Quran and the Sunnah. This is one of the only books of its type that has been written, compiled over 30 years in Arabic and in English. This is translated by his son. So we can learn how to teach the deen properly. Are we saying that we're better than the Quranic methodology? If the Quran came gradually, we move gradually. Where the Quran tells us to stop, we stop. We're not making things halal because we're telling people work on it. That's not making anything halal. We never said alcohol is halal. We never said that fornication is halal. We never said any of that is halal. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the Sahaba came to him, one of them came to him about the issue, of fornication and so on and so forth. What did he say? Would you want that for your mother or for your sister, that type of thing? Isn't that a way of gradually encouraging the person to change? Also, are we supposed to say it's haram? Did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam come and when people brought sins to him, did he immediately come and say, well, let's establish the hudud, the punishment, or did he try to send them away periodically and try to get them not to mention their sins and to encourage them to change? When the Arabi was in the masjid, urinating in the masjid, how did the Prophet deal with the situation? How did Abu Bakr react to it? How did he want to deal with the situation? How was it that the Prophet deal with the situation? The ulama, they say in that regard, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam enjoined him to chill, to relax. Abu Bakr, let the person finish what he was doing, and then go and address the person. Because if he would have addressed him and just put a stop to it, he would have made a bigger mess than what the situation was already. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Imam Shawkani rahmatullahi alayhi, he says in Dur al-Bahiyya, it was the habit of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam that when people engage in mistakes in their act of ibadah, he didn't tell them to go back and make it up initially, but he would tell them what was wrong so they can fix it in the future. That's what we're talking about doing with the converts, being gentle with them, with the firmness of knowledge and walking with them. There's no compromise. If you want to be mateen in your deen, that's your issue. There's Ibn Umar and there's Ibn Abbas. There's the rukhas of Ibn Abbas and the shadaid of Ibn Umar. So you're trying to tell us we have to be like Ibn Umar in every situation? There's some situations we function like Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhuma, and some situations we function like Ibn Abbas, radiallahu anhuma. So that's the situation that we confront, that there's different approaches to tarbiyah, people. Tarbiyah means our own formation and development. There's no one size fits all on that situation. If we take that type of approach, we're going to end up breaking people. And I'm getting the phone calls and listening. It's not for me. It has nothing to do with me as an individual or intisar mawqifi. This is not about me and making sure that my position is the haq. No. It's about the people and trying to see what they need and saying we have to humble ourselves and see how it is that we're going to address their situations. That's going to take real work. That's not going to come by just sitting in books. It's not going to come by just dictating in fatwa. It's going to come by when you walk with the people in their situations. Some people have mental health issues. Explain to me how they're going to change overnight. Explain that one. Explain how people that have mental health issues, if we don't look at anything else and we just say that the deen is complete and this is it, like some people are saying, that's a deen without people. Some of our community has mental health issues. And some of them are even from overseas. I know a brother who is born to a Muslim family. He was born, his family from overseas. And he has mental health issues, and he told me openly he smokes weed. And we're not going to get into the whole concept of medical marijuana. No, he smokes weed. We had to deal with a young brother in northern New Jersey, similar situation. His family came to talk to us so we could talk to him, and they said, no. We deal with the situations. We can claim strictness and hardness all we want. And guess what? At the end of the day, because we're not with the people and walking with them, it's not working. And I'm not knocking the whole issue of some people, you know, the model of strictness of the deen. I'm not saying, because we have the example of Ibn Umar. But that doesn't work for everybody. That's why Abu Dhar, radiallahu anhu, he didn't take the leadership of the Muslim community. He was a zahid. Fi dunya. He did without. But he wasn't the right person to lead the ummah in that situation. And this is the same thing with dealing with various communities. Some of us are not the right people to talk about women's issues. And some of us, we can't go. I myself, I try to be very careful. Because I know that if I come into certain tribal environments, and I come in, I try to make a certain change in a certain way, it'll be very destructive. So we have to respect the people. And we have to be patient like Nuh alayhi salatu wasalam. Even if it means that we're there with the people a long time, working with them. That's the problem. That we ourselves want something. Look, if the issue of istita', if the issue of capacity and ability wasn't real, then why is it that the Muslim ummah hasn't disengaged from riba? Why hasn't the Muslim ummah disengaged from riba? Why is the Muslim ummah, majority of it as a whole, still immersed in? Because we don't have the ability right now to remove ourselves from it. The average Muslim doesn't have the capacity to remove himself from it, except at a very personal level. And istita' is part of the deen. You can't negate it. There's no tarbiyah system without looking at the issue of istita'. If you're an alim al-rabbani, you look at what is within the capacity of the person and how to strengthen the person. Are we making up tarbiyah now? Or should I bring Maulana Thanawi into the equation? Because that's what you respect, some of you. Maulana Thanawi, he guided people in the process. He told them if they weren't clear, to go away. And when you're clear and when you know what you're doing, then let's talk. That was a form of tarbiyah. Aren't you brothers who claim to be from the people of Tasawwuf? Isn't that what you do to your believers? The followers that move with you from the believers? Don't you tell them do X, Y, and Z to strengthen themselves up? What's the whole purpose that you're engaging in that whole weird thing then? Isn't it for building people up? So then why are we dealing with the converts outside of that? You understand what I'm saying? That's there. If you respect the Sufi way, I brought you a principle that was rooted in the Quran and the Sunnah. If you understand the way of the Sahaba, the examples are there. But we have to stop destroying the convert community with the approach that we're teaching them in. This is a problem. We're making the issue of Christmas more of an issue than the fact that they're homeless on the street. You think a convert comes into the deen to fall back and make shirk with Allah? The person just left that. They understand the difference between shirk and not shirk. Let's not compare the issue of believing that Jesus is God with the issue of somebody eating with their family. Let's not compare the two. I'm not encouraging it. You understand what I'm saying? But I'm saying that we need to get it together. We need to understand how to deal with people. Because it's true. Do we realize that on this internet, we're mixing my web page by itself, my Facebook page by itself is full of non-Muslims. Non-Muslims are interacting with what's being said. Do you understand that this foolishness, how we engage this stuff, is one which is tainting the dawah. There's a saying in Spanish about the Muslims. Ustedes son amalgados. And that's a bad example that has been given. That you're a bitter people. That's what said. You go to Puerto Rico, that's what said. Ellos son amalgados. They're bitter people. You understand what I'm saying? They're not festive, not celebrative. They're bitter people. And so that is, and when I'll give you an example. When I first wanted to take my shahada, I came from Philly. I was in Cleveland, Ohio. And I went into one store and I was trying to get information. That's true. The person looked at me like it was nothing. Nothing. And in the Hanafi madhab, that type of approach, if you want me to hit you with the madhab, that type of approach in the Hanafi madhab, هذا يسمى الرضا بالكفر. To not want to move to facilitate the shahada for a person instantly is to be pleased with kufr. That's in that fiqh. In that fiqh, they have that concept. And that's the type of interaction that I got from the Muslims when I first became Muslim. The other instance, I go into the masjid and the brother said, what do you want? Later on, he taught me the wudu, but he treated me like trash. The other issue, I'm sitting down trying to take my shahada. The mufti from Bangladesh is sitting there questioning me philosophically about why I want to take shahada. And the other brother there from the Amir Tablighi Jamaat said, I'm sitting here, wait a second. Again, if we take it back to the Hanafi madhab, هذا الرضا بالكفر. Why don't you facilitate? Then the technicality will take a bath. Can you take a bath? Yo, I took a bath because I read how to take the shahada. I took a bath, put on clean clothes, and went to the masjid by myself. I didn't need someone to guide me in that process. And it's not for me to talk about me. It's that we ourselves, the way that we treat people and the way that we deal with this issue is collapsing the deen. It's not Islam. I'd rather be with what was going on with Malcolm X in that time period, where he's giving an example of personal transformation and change. If we want to talk about changing for Islam, the black community itself, we can learn that 100% for the black community. That's the reality of the situation. And I know some of them will push, do this, do that. But guess what? There's more supports in how to become Muslim than in the general community. That's just a fact. You understand what I'm saying? And I know brothers from Palestine that have become Muslim in their practice from heart, not Muslim from birth. And they told me, brothers that I love, that are my brothers, say if it was not for the black community, I wouldn't be practicing. We used to go to the stores that are selling alcohol. And we used to go and call them to die. I used to go with Jamaat Tabligh. I used to go with a completely different purpose. But I used to go with them in the process. I used to go just to remind the person. I told the person in Arabic, there's no need. Stay here. هذه تذكرة فقط. This is just a reminder. I'm reminding you, brother, because I love you for the sake of Allah. I see that you're here in this environment to hold on to your deen. I understand your condition. And from the khutbah, we used to tell the brothers, if you work together, if you put your hands together, then you wouldn't be in the situation where you have to be in a store which is selling alcohol. And out of concern and love for the brothers, when all of this economic stuff started to happen, I used to tell the brothers from the minbar, we're in an environment that has changed, brothers. The economy has changed. You brothers are in environments where there's high crime. You have to watch yourselves. And I had to be the imam to get the news that brother so-and-so that was in my Juma and was there, he got shot and killed because he got robbed. And to hear from another young Palestinian that the stores that get robbed the most are those that sell alcohol. So what are we talking about? Ease up on the issue of the converts this and the converts that. The converts know what they need. If we're really concerned about the converts, don't talk to me about Christmas. Talk to me about how it is that we're going to funnel the zakat money and the sadaqah money and support creating environments which are going to facilitate for that, for their growth. That's what's needed. We have imams, we have mashaykh, we have people in da'wah. We don't need people dictating to us from the outside that reality. You know, that's just the situation that we have at hand. And it's not an issue of, well, the money was all. No, it's not. It's creating environments. Isn't that what your mashaykh say? Isn't that what your mashaykh from the Deobandi, they say? Create environments of iman. Well, we're not creating environments of iman. We're not creating environments where people can establish themselves and maintain themselves. And if right now, if I were in a situation, which I have a situation like that, where a brother is homeless, I can only help him for X amount of days in the Muslim community. I can only help him 2-3 days in the Muslim community. You understand? Which I did. Here in the Chicagoland area, we don't have any full-time place to incorporate homeless Muslims. And so, you know, so then if we're worried about converts, why aren't we addressing that type of situation? If I have a sister that's thrown out of her household because she decides to take shahada, where are we going to put her at? After we pay for a hotel for a week at most, or maybe a month, where does she go? We have Muslims here that were born Muslim that don't even know how to pray salah, that were in my classes. And the first thing that they come in their mind, well, I have to join the good and forbid. Hold on a second. You yourself have to focus on yourself and your relationship. You don't want to bring that type of approach to practicing the deen to your family, which was born Muslim. They know what Islam is, and you know that they're not practicing. That's not going to work, you coming in like that. So I don't think that is the correct approach. I may be wrong on that issue. I can't talk only from the angle of one group, because I'm dealing with a community which has all of y'all involved in it. And so if all of you are involved in it, we all have the responsibility of addressing the issue. But the convert community, no way. We're not accepting that. The convert community needs people to walk with them step by step so that their Islam maintains after 20 and 30, 40 years. They don't burn out with this group and this sheikh and that sheikh and this position and that position. So that's what's happening to many of the converts. You understand what I'm saying? Many of them are burnt out, without family, without support. And then we're talking about telling them how to practice the deen. Some of them are even secretly Muslims. And then you put that burden on their backs. That's not fair. Let's not equate someone sitting at a table and eating dinner with somebody believing that Jesus is God, or going to a church and celebrating that. On the Christmas holiday, you understand what I'm saying? That they're celebrating the birth of God. That's not what they're doing. Now, the born Muslims that are involved in that, that's a whole different discussion. I'm not going to get into that issue. The born Muslims, why they're doing that and so on and so forth, what's going on with them, that's a whole different issue. But the convert, we have to stop trying to address all of these issues all at one time. The convert issue is a sensitive issue. We cannot speak to it in generalizations because we don't know where those people are at. We don't know if the reason why that person went to go celebrate in the Christmas, not at the church, at the family dinner, because the person's father is about to die. I know a brother right now that just left out of the area to go see his father because of COVID, and he wanted to make sure that he saw him for the last time. We don't know what the situation is. So we have to look and study and see what's going on there. You understand what I'm saying? We don't know if the person is going to the dinner because they have a cousin that wants to take shahada. So they want to go there and be supportive and give the shahada to their cousin. We don't know what the situation is. We don't know if the person is going because they're about to be kicked out of their home because they lost their job. We don't know. So we have to stop judging people like that and start building a support system in a real community that supports. Be people of fatwa that you understand the situation, how to navigate. Right? Like they say, التسهيل بالفتوى يعني أحسن من يعني التشدد في القضاء. It's better to make a mistake in facilitating a fatwa than to be heavy-handed and bring a judgment on someone, a judgment of the deen. Like, for instance, calling them a kafir or calling them a munafiq. How did we arrive at that? But by what principles did we achieve that? What's the principles for takfir in that? What's the principles for the ruling in that? Did all the obstacles, were they removed for us to come to that conclusion that the person is a fasiq, or the person is a kafir, or the person is a muqtadi' and all of that? People, love will get us a long way, wallahi. If you want to show and prove what the haqq is, love the people. We've seen it by the power of Allah. And it's not anything has to do with me. We've seen trying to love the people. And we're not claiming we love the people with sincerity. And we're not putting ourselves in a position, Allah knows my condition. But wallahi, Allah has demonstrated that to me. If you show people that you care about them, they themselves will support the deen. When Hurricane Maria hit in Puerto Rico, and we went, myself and Imam Wesley specifically, Imam Daniel, but specifically on the occasions I went with Imam Wesley. We didn't talk anything about religion. We did something which, may Allah forgive us for doing. We had shirts on that said we were Muslim from Puerto Rico. We did do that. May Allah forgive us for that. But when we just went there and we showed concern and love for the community, the people themselves started to say Allah. The people started themselves, where are you from? Let me make prayer. I have a woman right now, up to now, she calls me 4 or 5 years later. It's been 4 years later. And she prays for me. She calls just to check up on me. Recently, because of the situations of putting up prayer lines for my aunt, and my family has seen the Muslims praying, one of my relatives got sick with COVID. And what did my family do? They called me up, can you please ask the Muslims to pray? My family is Catholic. My mom, she turned me out at one time. Now she's asking me to pray. No, we have to be careful. We have to be careful. Prior to that engagement, our going to our own communities and working with them and not trying to convert them like the Jehovah Witnesses and the Pentecostals and the Hebrew Israelites and every other group on the face of the earth, they themselves saw a different understanding of the Muslims. Because when they watch the news, when they watch the TV programs, it's all negative. So you think we're going to resolve that by continuing negativity? The non-Muslims see that. They think that that's crazy. They're telling you don't come to visit your family. They can't understand that. So we have to be careful how we're dealing with the new Muslims. We don't want to create situations for them that disrupts their relationships with their families. And we also don't want them to compromise in their deen. That takes work. It's not going to come by a conversation or a lecture or a talk. It's going to come with us walking with them, strengthening them, guiding them. I have people that call me and just break down. I have nobody in my family. And the Muslims that I have in my family, they're not supportive. Complete breakdown. And we're here talking about whether a Muslim should celebrate a holiday or shouldn't celebrate a holiday. Let's get it together. Have your priorities straight. If you want to do some real work in protecting the deen, you know what I'm saying? You have all these other days of the year to be concerned with the affairs of the Muslim and their conditions. But that's not what the main concern is. It's easy to come and say, it's shirk, it's bid'ah, it's this, it's that, during a holiday in the middle of a pandemic that's impacting the whole world, that's only escalated even higher because we have a government that doesn't take care of us. And to tell people, you know what I'm saying, don't be with your families. Do you understand how you sound with that? What you should be telling them is like, if you go to your families during this time, make sure that you maintain your salah. Make sure that you maintain your orientation with Allah wa ta'ala. Be kind to your families. You're a Muslim. Remember that when you go, you're representing the deen. And stand firm on that issue of representing the deen without talking about it. Do something for them. Serve them, be nice for them, go clean the bathroom, go cook, go visit the uncle that nobody visits. Like that. Be nice. Be loving. Go into those situations like that and you see how much it'll change. Because they themselves already know. They hear, they read. They already know what the Muslims are on. Now, the situation of the Muslims that were born Muslim and they have Christmas trees, that's a different problem that we need to discuss. It deserves a different discussion. What's going on with the Muslims? We can't always say also it's an issue of Aqidah. Because sometimes it's not an issue of Aqidah. Sometimes it's the issue of wanting to fit in and to be loved because they don't have anybody, not even in the Muslim community. And we have to be careful how we judge situations. Call it compromise, call it what you want. You understand what I'm saying? No, don't judge people without knowing their situations and their circumstances. If you're concerned, listen to them and see what's going on. Don't judge from a situation that you don't know what they sacrifice. The other day, a brother told me, and I'm shutting this live off on this. And the brother almost made me cry. He told me, I took my shahada, my family disowned me. I went to work with the Kufi, I lost my job. What do you say after that? And we're trying to tell the converts what to do and how to be? Are we losing our job because of the deen? Are we losing our family relationships because of the deen? Are we there to support those brothers when they lose everything? That's part of the dilemma that we're in. We're not there at that level, but we want to dictate with rules. That's not how the da'wah worked. The Prophet ﷺ, when he sent Mu'adh, in the hadith that's in Bukhari and Muslim, when he sent Mu'adh to Yemen to teach them, he told them, you're going to a people of the book? Say, you're going to a people of the book? First call them to Tawheed. He didn't call them to know the proofs for the existence of Allah wa ta'ala from Fakhr al-Din al-Razi or this or that. Don't be mad at me, but I'm telling you the reality. I'm telling you the reality. He told them they already believe in Allah, but they have shirk. Work with them on the issue. Then if they accept, then call them to salah. So when you tell me that there's no graduality in the deen, Ya Shaykh, Ya Mawlana, when you're trying to argue with me about the minhaj of the Quran and the Sunnah, the Quran came and gradually eliminated alcohol. That's how the Quran worked with the Sahaba. When I talked to Shaykh Abdul Fattah al-Shaykh, Rahmatullahi alayhi, was my teacher in Usul al-Fiqh, was the president of Azhar, is that permissible for us to utilize as a principle? When I was studying that very principle of Tashri' al-Islamiyya with the ulama of Azhar, can we use that principle to work with our people? He said, yeah, for you guys it's allowable. For us, in a Muslim majority country, no. So who should I take? You understand what I'm saying? Should I take the mashaykh that are the leaders? You understand what I'm saying? And he was a harsh teacher, rahmatullahi alayhi. People know, ask Imam Suhaib Webb, my dealings with him. You know what I'm saying? Ask how he dealt with me. Is it when it comes to you guys and your situation and your process, use the principle. For us, that we're in a Muslim, all Muslim land, we have a different set of responsibilities. For us in the minhaj of the Salaf, the minhaj of the Sahaba, the way of the companions, whatever you want to call it, the Quran, how did it deal with them? We know that the whole of the Quran was revealed. But how did the Quran deal with them? The Quran dealt with them gradually. You can't deny that by the time they were going to Medina, they were still struggling with alcohol. You can't deny that over almost 23 years, they were still dealing with riba. We have to have wisdom. Hajj itself as a principle from the arkan of the deen. Man istata' ilayhi sabila. Whoever has the capacity and the ability to practice the Hajj, then engage in the pillar. If all the conditions are met and you have the capacity and the ability. That's just the reality. There's no way, those of us who know and deal with addiction and we deal with issues, there's no way that majority of the people, you have some amazing people that Allah blesses them and opens for them. But there's no way that someone's going to give up an addiction overnight. Boom, cold turkey. What are you talking about? If the person is engaging in heroin, you're telling them cold turkey because it's haram, you may kill the person like that. As a matter of fact, don't you know the story of the Sahabi who ended up making the ghusl with cold water, and how the Prophet ﷺ addressed that situation because he ended up dying? The Prophet ﷺ, didn't he deal with that situation by saying you killed them to that effect? Somebody teach me the hadith. And from there it became known that you can use tayammum in ghusl or wudu. This deen is mateen, is firm. Right? So go into it with rifq. Go into it, with ease. Don't go into it bishadda. It'll spit you out, people. Islam is firm like that. If you find yourself in a situation, then you have to look at what is the harm and the benefit. If you find yourself in a situation that you stop practicing, you stop fasting, okay, but you hold on to salah. Okay, you're not praying. Okay, at least do one salah. The least that you should do ever is you leave your basics in iman. You understand what I'm saying? Because by increasing your deeds, you increase your iman. When you decrease your deeds, you decrease iman. But how can you get the deeds? How can you get back to be firm? You have to work with yourself. Be charitable with yourself, but be firm, be charitable. Make it easy for you to come back to Allah wa ta'ala. That's why tawbah, it was a sign. Don't you remember the hadith of the man who killed 99 men? The religious people that were telling him there was no salvation for him because he didn't meet their qualification of what religiosity meant. And the one who gave him the wisdom of how to implement the deen, the opposite in methodologies, the one who told him, yeah, there's a way for you. Make tawbah as these steps, but go to another environment. What are we talking about? People, if they strive, that's between them and Allah. We're not changing the deen. We're trying to deal with people in real time and real place. But what's happening is that in the name of you claiming you're protecting the deen, you're breaking the people. You understand what I'm saying? You break the people from every front. Now y'all want to talk about racism? You understand what I'm saying? Where were y'all yesterday? Where were you yesterday? I was in Chicago just yesterday. I was watching a young boy, a young African-American man was pulled over by the cops for no reason. They jumped out on him. And he's like this. And he's walking away like somebody just beat him up. No constitutional rights. Like, what are y'all talking about? Y'all not dealing with our community. That's the reality at the end of the day. You're not dealing with our community. And because you're not dealing with our community, you don't understand these issues. As a matter of fact, you're not even dealing with the youth. The youth that are in your circles of ta'aleem and ta'allum and so on and so forth, they come into the so-called Shaikh that's not the Maulana type and so on and so forth because they're scared of you. They're scared to tell you what it is that they're going through. They're scared to tell you that they went to the club and got hooked up with a girl. They're scared of telling you that they smoke weed. They're scared of telling you that they're not feeling the salah. And I don't want to be like that. I don't want to be that in that type of approach. But we have to stop. I don't want to be in an attack mode. We have to stop that. We're not compromising. When you accuse me of compromising the deen, Ya Maulana, you accuse me of Allah. And I won't back off from that. I ask Allah Ta'ala for my rights in that regard. You understand what I'm saying? When you accuse me and you say, I bring you a dalil from the Quran and saying, that the Quran is teaching us to have taqwa of Allah according to our ability. What ayat do you have to override that? Your speech, your word, you're saying we're compromising in the deen? Well, show me the proof. Show me the proof. If you're going to use said the dhariya, blocking the means, give me the dalil for using it as an asl. Because you're making an ijtihad. If you say that, if you do this, it's going to lead to this. Give me the dalil. Give me the dalil. We have fiqh al-tawaqqu' and we have fiqh al-iftiradi. The hypothetical fiqh in a hypothetical situation. If you're going to bring a hypothesis, well, if you do this, then that's going to happen. Then use the minhaj of Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi. And make sure that you have your ducks in order. If you're going to talk about what's the possibility, fiqh al-tawaqqu', you have to bring the actual probability of that being the case. Did you study it? We're dealing with counseling. We're dealing with mental health. We're dealing with social sciences. We're dealing with experience with the community. And we're dealing with the principles of the deen. And we have an understanding that what is at stake here is the survival of our iman. What do you want? We have examples of people. Don't you know the fadail of the shahada? We have people that have said La ilaha illallah in the history of the ummah, and they go and they die and they go into Islam. That's what we want from the least. Our methodology, yes, al-iman qawl wa amal. That iman is confessing with the tongue and the heart, belief in the unity of Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala, and acting upon that. And having that belief with conviction. And if we were to add having an intention, and that intention should be aligned with the sunnah, and that intention should be for the pleasure of Allah. Those things are understood. But how do we get from A to Z with the people? Your methodology, we appreciate it. We love you for the sake of Allah. But we're in North America. The methodology of telling people dress this way, remove themselves this way, and function in this way, and have a turban on in this way, that's fine. We respect you in that regard. But that's not the only methodology in the deen. Don't equate something that is a cultural manifestation of the deen with some basis in the deen with how people should be. It's not wajib. You understand what I'm saying? It's not fard. Those things are not wajib and fard. What's wajib and fard is that the people present themselves in a way which is in line with the sharia. And what's wajib and fard is that the people try to maintain their relationship with Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So that's what we're trying to do. So when you come and you just argue, and I'm ending definitely on this note, and you tell the people, well, this is a compromise in the deen of this and that. No, they don't need to hear that from you. They really don't. Did you invite them over your house? Or are you telling me, no, Christmas days, we can't get together, the Shabu bil Kufar? What principles are we using? That's what we need to lay on the equation. Principles, evidences, experience with people. That's how da'wah is moving. At the end of the day. Experience with people, principles in the deen, evidences in detail. Right? That's how we should move. But just talking and just assuming. You collapse the issue of politics with the issue of the converts, with the issue of the new generation Muslims. No. All of those issues are all different. The issue of the political realm is not the issue of the new generation Muslims. The issue of the convert Muslims is not the issue of those Muslims who are falling off on their deen. Those are different issues. Let's be fuqaha about this, people. I'm ending on this note. Share with me, wallahi. Share with me. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullahi alayhi, it was his methodology to take and make sure with the people in his circle. And they would come up to solutions together. And my belief is al-amal al-jama'i. We can only operate if we operate together. There's no such thing as a one-man show to deal with these problems of the ummah. It's impossible. We don't have all of the answers as individuals. Even when it came to the knowledge of the sunnah, not one sahabi had all of the knowledge of the sunnah. All of the sahaba had to be taken together, radiallahu anhum ajma'in, for the knowledge of the sunnah to be gathered. And it's the same thing this is the same thing that's going to happen with us in dealing with our situation at hand. You understand what I'm saying? For us dealing with our situation at hand. And I'll tell you this, listen, take on to the akhlaq of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to his behavior, his characteristics in dealing with people. You can study that in Rios Salihin. You can study that in Rahik Makhtoum. You can study that in any book of Sirah. And make that as the way that you deal with people. Don't get caught up in this hadith or this ayah of the Quran. Leave that for the people of knowledge that have principles. But at the basic level, look at even if you come from that type of orientation, look at Hayat al-Sahaba and all of the different modalities of how they dealt with the convert community. Look at the lives of the prophets and how they dealt with the community, right? Look at the lives of those from around us, our elders that have been Muslim 40, 50 years, how they came into the deen, sit with them. Look at the life of El-Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, and see how he came into the deen. And then we'll understand how to deal with the converts. You understand? I have an elder of mine from Alianza Islamica, Hajj Yahya Figueroa, was one of the leaders in the Puerto Rican community, Muslims. And he cried because of the damage that he done listening to the Muslims with regard to his relationships. And he taught us to be careful in this regard, to be careful not to destroy our family relationships and our relationships with our community based on what the Muslims are saying. He taught us to be careful. We should maintain our relationships with them, and we should navigate that hardship as it is. And it's a long process. We're going to listen to our elders who've been in the deen working with this for years. We're not going to listen to somebody that just came out of the blue and telling us how to build with no experience in that regard. Assalamu alaikum.